When Sienna steps into the wrong car after a disastrous gala, she unknowingly confides in billionaire CEO Lucas Hartman, posing as her driver. What happens when the truth comes out? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The rain pounded against the windows of the Grand Plaza Hotel as Sienna Brooks stood under the covered entrance, her feet aching in the high heels she wasn't used to wearing. The black dress she'd borrowed from her friend Maria felt too tight, and her makeup was starting to run from the humidity. The disaster of a gala she'd helped organize was finally over, and all she wanted was to get home to check on her brother. "Come on," she muttered, checking her phone again for the car service app. The little icon showed her driver was still 15 minutes away. Just perfect. 6 months ago, she never would have imagined being here in this city, alone with her 16-year-old brother Jason, trying to make ends meet after their parents' fatal car accident. But here she was, 26 years old, and carrying the weight of 2 people on her shoulders. Sienna shivered as a cool breeze blew through the hotel entrance. Her thin wrap did little to keep her warm. The gala had been a nightmare from start to finish. The flowers delivered late, the keynote speaker arriving drunk, and her boss, Vanessa, blaming her for everything that went wrong. "You're new to Carter events, Sienna," Vanessa had said with a cold smile. "You need to prove yourself if you want to stay with us." Tonight was disappointing. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and Sienna hurried forward, assuming it was her ride. The rear passenger window rolled down, revealing a handsome man with dark hair and deep blue eyes. He looked about 30, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. "Car for Brooks?" she asked hopefully. The man hesitated for just a second, his eyes scanning her face. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled and nodded. "Yes, that's right." Relieved, Sienna hurried around to the other side as he pushed the door open for her. She slid into the warm leather interior and sighed with relief. "Thank you so much. This rain is awful," she said, settling back against the seat. "No problem," the man replied, his voice deep and smooth. "Where to?" Sienna gave him her address. In the West Side neighborhood, not the best area, but all she could afford with her new job. She noticed there was no partition between them, and the car seemed much nicer than the usual rideshare vehicles. "Fancy car for a driver service," she commented, admiring the leather interior. The man's lips curved into a slight smile. "It's a special night." "Not for me," Sienna laughed without humor. "The gala was a complete disaster. My boss is probably going to fire me tomorrow." "That bad, huh?" "Worse," Sienna said, surprising herself with how easily she was talking to this stranger. "You know what the worst part is? All those rich people didn't even notice. They were too busy showing off their designer clothes and making deals with each other." The man raised an eyebrow. "You don't like rich people?" Sienna sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's not that. It's just they live in a different world. A world where real problems don't exist, where losing your parents and having to move to a strange city to find work doesn't happen, where you don't have to worry if your teenage brother is eating dinner alone again because you're working late." She stopped suddenly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you all this." "Don't apologize," he said softly. "Sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers." For the first time, Sienna really looked at the driver. He was remarkably good-looking, with a strong jaw and kind eyes that seemed to see right through her. There was something about him that seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Do you drive a lot of these fancy events?" she asked. He kept his eyes on the road. "Enough to know the type of people you're talking about." "Well, tonight was the worst." "Hartman Enterprises. Have you heard of them?" "Tech company, finance, real estate. They have their fingers in everything. Their CEO was supposed to be there tonight, but he didn't even show up." "Probably too important," she said with a small laugh. "My boss nearly had a heart attack." The driver coughed slightly but didn't comment. "I shouldn't complain," Sienna continued. "At least I have a job and I need to keep it. My brother's counting on me." "Your brother? You mentioned him earlier," the driver said. "It's just the two of you." Sienna nodded, looking out at the rain-streaked window. "Our parents died in a car accident 6 months ago. I became Jason's guardian. He's 16, smart but angry at the world right now. Who can blame him? We had to leave our hometown, all his friends, everything. That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age. What choice do I have? Sienna shrugged. He's all I have left. The car slowed as they approached her apartment building. It wasn't much, a brick 5-story walk-up with fire escapes zigzagging down the facade, but it was home now. This is me, she said, reaching for her purse to pay. How much do I owe you? The driver shook his head. It's taken care of. What? But I ordered the car myself. Company promotion, he said smoothly. First-time riders get a free trip. Sienna frowned, certain she hadn't seen any promotion, but she was too tired to argue. Well, thank you. You're a lifesaver. What's your name? I'll request you next time if I can. He hesitated again before answering. Luke. Thank you, Luke. She smiled at him, the first genuine smile of her evening. I'm Sienna. I know, he replied, then quickly added, from the ride request. She nodded and got out of the car, hurrying through the rain to her building entrance. When she turned back to wave, the car was still there, Luke watching to make sure she got in safely. Something warm sparked in her chest at the simple gesture of kindness from a stranger. Lucas Hartman drove slowly away from the apartment building, his mind racing. He hadn't planned to pretend to be a driver tonight. When his actual driver texted that he was stuck in traffic, Lucas had decided to wait outside, needing fresh air after escaping the suffocating atmosphere of the gala. The last person he expected to encounter was this beautiful, honest woman who clearly had no idea who he was. Lucas Hartman, CEO of Hartman Enterprises, the very company whose event she'd been working tonight. Her words echoed in his mind. They live in a different world. A world where real problems don't exist. Was that how people saw him? As someone untouched by real problems? Lucas gripped the steering wheel tighter as he drove toward his penthouse in the city center. At 30, he had more money than he could spend in a lifetime, but few people he could trust. After his father's death 2 years ago, he'd taken over the family business, only to discover corruption and backstabbing at every level of management. Tonight's gala was supposed to be a celebration of the company's new charitable foundation, but Lucas had walked out after overhearing his COO, Richard Maxwell, plotting with board members to minimize the foundation's funding while maximizing its PR value. He'd left without making his scheduled speech, knowing it would cause a stir. But he couldn't stand there and pretend everything was perfect when his father's company was being pulled in directions that went against everything the old man had stood for. Now, driving through the rain-slicked streets, Lucas couldn't stop, thinking about Sienna, her warm brown eyes, the way she spoke about her brother with such love and worry, how she'd been so refreshingly real. By the time he reached his building, Lucas had made a decision that surprised even himself. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Megan, I need you to do something unusual for me first thing tomorrow morning. Sienna woke to the sound of her alarm blaring at 6 a.m. She groaned, her body aching from yesterday's long hours on her feet. When she checked her phone, her heart sank. There was a message from Vanessa. My office, 9 a.m. sharp. Great, she muttered, dragging herself out of bed. She padded down the short hallway to Jason's room and knocked gently. Jason, you need to get up for school. A muffled groan came from inside. At least he was awake. In the small kitchen, Sienna started the coffee maker and pulled out cereal boxes. By the time Jason emerged, his dark hair sticking up in all directions, she had breakfast ready. Morning sunshine, she said, trying to sound cheerful. Jason grunted in response, pouring himself a bowl of cereal. At 16, he was already taller than her, with the same dark hair and eyes as their father. How was the fancy party? He asked between bites. A disaster, Sienna admitted. But the good news is I got a free ride home. Jason raised an eyebrow. From who? Just a nice driver, she said, remembering Luke's kind eyes. Anyway, I might be in trouble at work, so don't wait up tonight. I'll probably have to stay late to make up for it. Again, Jason sighed. Sienna, you're working too much. We need the money, Jace, you know that. He looked down at his cereal. I could get a part-time job. Help out. Sienna shook her head firmly. No way. Your job is to finish high school with good grades so you can get a scholarship. That's it. It's not fair that you have to do everything. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Life isn't fair, kiddo, but we've got each other, and that's what matters. After Jason left for school, Sienna got ready for work with a sense of dread. If Vanessa fired her, she'd have to start all over again, and good jobs were hard to find, especially ones that paid enough to support 2 people. She arrived at Carter Events 15 minutes early, her stomach in knots. The office was busy as usual, with planners rushing around, preparing for upcoming events. Vanessa's office door was closed. "Hey," Maria whispered, stopping at Sienna's desk. "I heard about last night. Don't worry, it wasn't your fault." "Try telling Vanessa that," Sienna replied, attempting a smile. At exactly 9 o'clock, Vanessa's door opened. "Sienna, come in." Sienna took a deep breath and walked into the office, preparing herself for the worst. Vanessa was sitting behind her desk, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her keyboard. "Sit down," she said, not looking up. Sienna perched on the edge of the chair, waiting for the axe to fall. "Last night was a disaster," Vanessa finally said, looking up with cold eyes. "The Hartman event was supposed to be flawless. I know, and I'm sorry about—" Vanessa held up a hand, cutting her off. "However, it seems you've made quite an impression on someone important." Sienna blinked in confusion. "What?" "We received a call this morning from Hartman Enterprises. They specifically requested you to plan their upcoming charity auction next month." "Me?" Sienna couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But why?" Vanessa shrugged. "I have no idea, but they're one of our biggest clients, so I'm not about to question it." She leaned forward. "Don't mess this up, Sienna. This is your second chance. Most people don't get one." "I won't," Sienna promised, her mind racing. Why would Hartman Enterprises ask for her after last night's fiasco? Back at her desk, Sienna tried to make sense of what had happened. As she scrolled through her emails, her phone buzzed with a notification from the car service app. "Your driver has arrived." Sienna frowned. She hadn't ordered a car. It must be a mistake. She was about to ignore it when another message came through. "Your premium account has been upgraded. Daily rides to and from work are now included in your plan." "What the?" Sienna whispered. She definitely couldn't afford a premium account. Curious, she gathered her things and went downstairs. Outside, the same sleek black car from last night was waiting. The window rolled down, revealing Luke's familiar face. "Good morning," he said with a smile. "Need a ride?" Sienna approached the car cautiously. "There must be some mistake. I didn't order this." "No mistake," Luke replied. "You've been assigned as one of my regular clients. Door-to-door service every day. But I can't afford that. It's a new company promotion," he explained. "For valued customers, everything's covered." Sienna hesitated, still confused but tempted by the offer. Her commute usually involved 2 crowded buses and took over an hour each way. "I don't understand why I'd qualify, but okay," she finally said, sliding into the back seat. "Thank you." As Luke pulled away from the curb, Sienna couldn't help feeling that something strange was happening. First the Hartman request, now this. Free car service? It seemed too coincidental. "So," Luke said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "Better day than yesterday?" Sienna laughed. "Actually, yes. Somehow I didn't get fired. In fact, I got assigned to an important new project." "Congratulations," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I knew things would turn around for you." There was something about his voice that made Sienna feel warm inside. She studied him as he drove, noticing the expensive watch on his wrist and how confidently he handled the car. "You don't seem like a typical driver," she commented. Luke's eyes met hers briefly in the mirror. "What does a typical driver seem like?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But you seem different." He smiled. "Maybe I am." For the rest of the ride, they chatted easily about the city, the weather, and Sienna's new project, though she was careful not to mention client names. By the time they reached her apartment, Sienna realized she'd enjoyed herself more than she had in months. "Same time tomorrow?" Luke asked as she got out. "You're serious about this daily service thing?" He nodded. "Very serious." "Then yes," Sienna said, surprised by how much she was looking forward to it. Tomorrow. As she watched the car drive away, Sienna couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just taken an unexpected turn. She didn't know where it was leading, but for the first time since her parents' death, she felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, things were finally looking up. Lucas drove away from Sienna's apartment with a smile on his face. Using his connections to arrange her daily car service had been easy. Making sure he was always her driver would be trickier, but he had a plan for that too. What he didn't have a plan for was what would happen when she inevitably discovered who he really was. Because sooner or later, Sienna Brooks would learn that her friendly driver Luke was actually Lucas Hartman, the very CEO she thought hadn't bothered to show up at his own gala. But for now, Lucas pushed that worry aside. For the first time in years, he felt something genuine stirring in his heart. Something that had nothing to do with business deals or corporate strategy. Something that made him look forward to tomorrow. And tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. "See, are you soon, Sienna?" he whispered as he drove into the fading sunlight, already counting the hours until their next ride together. Over the next 3 weeks, Sienna's morning and evening rides with Luke became the highlight of her day. There was something about the quiet intimacy of the car that made it easy to talk, really talk, in a way she hadn't with anyone since her parents died. "So your brother's birthday is coming up?" Luke asked one rainy Tuesday morning as they sat in traffic. Sienna nodded, surprised he'd remembered. "This Saturday. He'll be 17, though he already acts like he's 25 sometimes. Any special plans?" "I'm trying to get tickets to this basketball game he wants to see," Sienna said, frowning at her phone, "but they're way too expensive." "On my budget." Luke glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I might know someone who could help with that." "Oh, I couldn't ask you to—" "You didn't ask," he said with a warm smile. "I offered. Let me see what I can do." That was the thing about Luke. He was always offering to help, but never in a way that made Sienna feel like a charity case. He was just kind. And something more, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. By the time he dropped her off at work, Sienna realized she was smiling. Even the prospect of a long day planning the Hartman charity auction couldn't dampen her mood. As she settled at her desk, Maria rolled her chair over with a knowing look. "What?" Sienna asked, arranging her files. "Don't—" "What, me?" Maria said, lowering her voice. "Who is he? Who is who?" "The guy who drops you off every morning in that fancy car. The one who makes you smile like that." Sienna felt her cheeks warm. "He's just my driver." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Honey, no one smiles like that about just a driver. Besides, I saw him. He looks like he stepped off a magazine cover." "It's not like that," Sienna insisted, though her heart fluttered at the thought. "We just talk, that's all." Maria hummed skeptically. "And I'm just saying, it's nice to see you smile again." Before Sienna could respond, Vanessa appeared with a stack of files. "The Hartman team wants an update on the auction plans," she announced, dropping the files on Sienna's desk. "They're sending someone over this afternoon to review everything." Sienna nodded, pushing thoughts of Luke aside. "I'll be ready." She spent the morning finalizing details for the charity auction, which was now just 2 weeks away. Despite her initial nervousness about handling such a high-profile event, Sienna found she actually enjoyed the challenge. The auction would raise money for youth education programs, a cause that hit close to home with her brother's situation. At 2 o'clock, Vanessa's assistant appeared at Sienna's desk. "The Hartman representative is here, conference room B." Sienna gathered her presentation materials, took a deep breath, and headed to the meeting. When she opened the door, she found a tall woman with silver-streaked dark hair waiting for her. "Ms. Brooks, I'm Megan Chen, executive assistant to Mr. Hartman," the woman said, extending her hand. "It's nice to meet you," Sienna replied, shaking her hand. "I have everything prepared for review." As they went through the plans, Sienna was surprised by how smoothly the meeting went. Megan seemed impressed with her work and offered helpful suggestions rather than criticism. "You've done excellent work here," Megan said when they finished. "Mr. Hartman will be pleased." "Thank you," Sienna said, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "I wasn't sure why your company requested me specifically, but I'm grateful for the opportunity." Megan gave her a curious look. "Mr. Hartman has a good eye for talent. He must have seen something in you." "But I've never even met him," Sienna said, confused. Megan smiled enigmatically. "Sometimes people see more than we realize." After the meeting, Sienna texted Jason to let him know she'd be working late again. His response was short. "Whatever. Not like I'm surprised." Guilt twisted in her stomach. She was trying so hard to provide for them, but it felt like the harder she worked, the more distant her brother became. By the time Luke picked her up that evening, Sienna was emotionally drained. "Rough day?" he asked gently as she slumped into the back seat. "Just tired," she sighed, "and feeling like a terrible sister." "Want to talk about it?" Sienna hesitated, then found herself pouring out her worries about Jason, how he was pulling away, how she was missing too much of his life, how she feared she was failing him. "I'm trying to build a good life for us," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "but sometimes I wonder if I'm just making everything worse." Luke pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her. In the dim light of the car, his blue eyes looked almost gray. "Listen to me, Sienna, you are doing an incredible job. Most people couldn't handle half of what you're dealing with. But Jason is a teenager who lost his parents," Luke finished gently. "He's angry and hurting, and you're the safest person for him to direct those feelings toward. That doesn't mean you're failing him." Sienna blinked back tears. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" Luke smiled softly. "I don't. But I know what it's like to lose family and feel like you're carrying too much weight alone." For a moment they just looked at each other, and Sienna felt something shift between them, a deepening of whatever connection had been growing these past weeks. Luke cleared his throat and turned back to the wheel. "Now, about those basketball tickets. Check your email when you get home." True to his word, when Sienna checked her email that night, she found 2 courtside tickets to Saturday's game. She stared at the screen in disbelief. These seats would have cost a fortune. "How did you do this?" she texted Luke, using the number he'd given her for transportation emergencies. His reply came quickly. "I told you, I know people." The smile that spread across Sienna's face lasted until she fell asleep. Lucas sat in his office on Friday afternoon, trying to focus on the quarterly reports in front of him. Instead, his mind kept drifting to Sienna. Her smile when she talked about the basketball tickets, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, how vulnerable she'd looked when talking about her brother. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Megan entered with a folder. "The final plans for the charity auction. Ms. Brooks did exceptional work." Lucas took the folder, feeling a mix of pride and guilt. "How did she seem when you met with her?" "Smart. Dedicated. Curious about why we'd requested her," Megan said with a pointed look. "Lucas, how long are you planning to keep up this charade?" He sighed and leaned back in his chair. "I don't know. Every time I think about telling her the truth, I imagine the look on her face when she realizes I've been lying to her all this time." "The longer you wait, the worse it will be," Megan warned. "You're playing with fire." "I know," Lucas admitted, "but for the first time in years, someone is seeing me. Just me, not my money or my company. Do you know how rare that is?" Megan's expression softened. "I do, which is why I haven't lectured you more about this crazy scheme. But Lucas, if you genuinely care about this woman, you need to be honest with her." After Megan left, Lucas stared out the window at the city skyline. He knew she was right. The charity auction was in 2 weeks. One way or another, Sienna would discover the truth then. But first, there was tomorrow, Jason's birthday. Lucas had one more surprise planned. Saturday morning, Sienna was awakened by her phone buzzing. It was a text from Luke. "Happy birthday to Jason. Car service still available if you need it today." Smiling, she texted back, "Thanks. Maybe later for the game." In the kitchen, she found Jason already up, scrolling through his phone. "Happy birthday," she said, pulling a small wrapped package from behind her back. Jason looked up, the ghost of a smile crossing his face. "Thanks." He opened the gift, the newest gaming headphones he'd been wanting, and gave her a quick, awkward hug. "There's something else," Sienna said, unable to contain her excitement. She pulled out the email with the basketball tickets. Jason's eyes widened. No way, these are courtside. Way, she laughed. A friend helped me get them. This is awesome. For the first time in months, Jason looked like his old self, the kid who used to laugh easily before grief had hardened him. Who's coming? With me? Well, I thought maybe we could go together, Sienna suggested hopefully. Jason's smile faded slightly. Oh, I kind of told my friend Tyler I'd get him if I got tickets. Sienna swallowed her disappointment. That's fine, you should take Tyler. You sure? She forced a smile. Of course, it's your birthday. Have fun with your friend. Later, after... Jason had left to meet Tyler before the game. Sienna's phone buzzed again. Still need that ride? Luke asked. Jason's going with a friend, she replied. Guess I'm not needed. The phone rang almost immediately. You okay? Luke's voice was concerned. Sienna sighed. I'm being silly. Of course he wants to go with his friend, not his boring big sister. You are many things, Sienna Brooks, but boring is not one of them, Luke said firmly. Tell you what, since you're free tonight, how about dinner? Sienna's heart skipped. Dinner? Yes. That meal people typically eat in the evening, he teased. I know a place that makes the best comfort food in the city. No pressure, just two. Friends having dinner. Friends, right, because that's all they were, a driver and his client who happened to talk every day. But if that was true, why did her heart race at the thought of seeing him outside the car? Okay, she said before she could overthink it. Dinner sounds nice. Great, I'll pick you up at 7. Sienna spent the rest of the afternoon feeling both excited and nervous. She tried on 3 different outfits before settling on a simple blue dress she hadn't worn since moving to the city. At exactly 7, there was a knock at her door. Sienna opened it to find Luke standing there, looking different out of his usual driver's clothes. In dark jeans and a grey button-down shirt, he looked even more handsome than she remembered. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. Hi, he replied, his eyes taking her in. You look beautiful. The restaurant he took her to was a small Italian place tucked away on a side street, cozy and warm, with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. This isn't what I expected, Sienna admitted as they were seated. What did you expect? Luke asked, curious. I don't know. Somewhere fancier, I guess. He smiled. I thought you weren't impressed by fancy things. I'm not, she said quickly. This is perfect, actually. How did you find it? My father used to bring me here when I was a kid, Luke said, a hint of sadness crossing his face. It was our special place. Was? Sienna asked gently. He died 2 years ago. Sienna reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I'm sorry. I know how much that hurts. For a moment, they sat in silence, connected by their shared understanding. Of loss. Tell me about your parents, Luke said softly. No one had asked Sienna that since the funeral. Most people avoided the topic, afraid to upset her. But as she began to speak about her mother's laugh, her father's terrible jokes, the Sunday breakfasts they always had together, she felt a weight lifting. Luke listened, really listened, asking questions and sharing his own memories of his father in return. By the time they finished their meal, Sienna felt like she'd known him for years, not weeks. Thank you for tonight, she said, as they walked back to his car. I needed this, more than I realized. Me too, Luke admitted. It's been a long time since I've had dinner with someone who wasn't trying to get something from me. Sienna looked at him curiously. What would anyone want from a driver? Luke hesitated, and for a moment, Sienna thought she saw something like guilt flash across his face, but then he smiled and shrugged. You'd be surprised. When they reached her apartment, Luke walked her to the door. In the dim hallway light, his eyes looked darker, more intense. I had a wonderful time, Sienna said softly. So did I. Luke stepped closer, and Sienna's breath caught. Sienna. The sound of the apartment door opening made them both jump. Back. Jason stood there looking between them with suspicious eyes. Hey, he said slowly. The game just ended. Oh, great, how was it? Sienna asked, her voice too bright. It was awesome, thanks again for the tickets. Jason's eyes narrowed at Luke. Who's this? This is Luke, Sienna said quickly. My driver. Luke, this is my brother Jason. Nice. To meet you, Luke said, extending his hand. Jason shook it reluctantly. Why is your driver at our door at 10 o'clock at night? We had dinner, Sienna explained, feeling her cheeks heat up. As friends. Uh-huh, Jason said skeptically. Well, thanks for bringing my sister home, I guess. An awkward silence fell between them. I should go, Luke said finally. Good night, Sienna. Happy birthday, Jason. After he left, Jason turned to Sienna with raised eyebrows. Your driver? Really? It's not what you think, she insisted. It's exactly what I think, Jason countered. You like him? Sienna sighed. There was no point denying it to herself anymore. Maybe I do. Is that so terrible? Jason's expression softened. No. Actually, it's kind of nice to see you interested in something besides work and worrying about me. I always worry about you. It's my job. Yeah, well, maybe you should think about yourself sometimes too. He gave her a quick hug. Thanks again for the tickets. They were the best present ever. As Jason disappeared into his room, Sienna leaned against the door thinking about the evening. About how natural it had felt to be with Luke, how she'd opened up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else. Her phone buzzed with a text. Thank you for tonight. Sweet dreams, Sienna. She hugged the phone to her chest, a smile spreading across her face. For the first time in a long time, Sienna allowed herself to feel something beyond grief and responsibility. Hope. Across town, Lucas paced his penthouse, unable to sleep. The evening with Sienna had been perfect. Too perfect. Every moment with her made him fall deeper, and every moment made his deception worse. He'd almost told her the truth tonight. The words had been on the tip of his tongue when Jason opened the door. Maybe it was for the best. Telling her now, after everything, would be a disaster. But not telling her before the charity auction would be even worse. Lucas stopped pacing and made a decision. He would tell her tomorrow during their morning ride. Rip off the bandage quickly. She would be angry, furious probably, but at least she would hear the truth from him first. With that resolution made, Lucas finally went to bed, trying not to think about how empty his car would feel without Sienna in it. Sunday morning, Sienna woke to the sound of her phone ringing. It was Vanessa. We have an emergency, her boss said without preamble. The Hartman auction venue just called. They had a pipe burst overnight. The whole place is flooded. Sienna sat up straight. What? But the auction is in 2 weeks. Exactly. I need you to find a new venue today, something comparable that can still accommodate all our guests. But that's impossible. Figure it out, Sienna, Vanessa snapped. This is why they're paying us the big bucks. Call me when you have options. After Vanessa hung up, Sienna collapsed back against her pillows. Finding an available venue on such short notice would be nearly impossible, especially one nice enough for the Hartman event. Her phone buzzed with a text from Luke. Morning ride? Sienna considered saying no. She had too much work to do, but the thought of seeing him again after last night made her heart beat faster. Yes, please, she texted back, but I need to go to the office for an emergency. When Luke picked her up 30 minutes later, Sienna was already making calls, trying to find an available venue. Emergency? He asked, noting her stressed expression. The venue for the Hartman auction is flooded, she explained, hanging up after another rejection. I need to find a new place by today, and everywhere is booked. Luke was quiet for a moment. What about the Hartman Tower? They have an event space on the top floor. Sienna looked up, surprised. How do you know that? I drive a lot of executives, he said smoothly. I've heard them talk about it. That would be perfect, but there's no way they'd let us use it on such short notice. Besides, I'd have to go through their whole corporate bureaucracy just to ask. Luke smiled mysteriously. Let me make a call. Before Sienna could protest, he had pulled over and taken out his phone. She watched as he stepped outside the car and made a call, speaking animatedly to someone on the other end. When he returned, he was smiling. Good news. The Hartman Tower event space is available for your auction. You just need to call this number to confirm the details. He handed her a business card. Sienna stared at the card, then at Luke. How did you do that? Like I said, I know people. People who can get me the most exclusive event space in the city with one phone call? Sienna shook her head in disbelief. Luke, who are you really? The smile faded from his face, replaced by an expression Sienna couldn't read. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. "Luke," she prompted, suddenly nervous. He took a deep breath. "Sienna, there's something I need to tell you. I'm not who you think I am." "What do you mean?" "I'm not actually a driver, I'm—" His phone rang, interrupting whatever he was about to say. Luke glanced at it and frowned. "I have to take this. It's important." Sienna nodded, her mind racing, with questions. What did he mean he wasn't a driver? Who was he then? Luke's conversation was brief but intense. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "I'm sorry, Sienna. There's an emergency I need to deal with. I'll have another driver. Take you to your office." "But what were you going to tell me?" Sienna asked, reaching for his arm. "We'll talk later, I promise," he said, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Just please remember that everything else, everything between us has been real." Before she could respond, another black car pulled up beside them. Luke helped her transfer her things, promised again that they would talk soon, and then he was gone, leaving Sienna with more questions than answers. At the office, Sienna tried to focus on calling the number Luke had given her. To her astonishment, not only was the Hartman Tower space available, but they seemed to be expecting her call. The woman on the phone was incredibly helpful, assuring Sienna that everything would be taken care of. "Mr. Hartman himself has approved the use of the space," the woman explained. "He wants to make sure the auction is a success." "Mr. Hartman," Sienna repeated, confused. "Lucas Hartman? But how would he even know about our venue problem? I just found out this morning." There was a pause on the line. "I'm not sure, Ms. Brooks. I just know that we received instructions to accommodate you fully." After the call, Sienna sat at her desk trying to make sense of everything. How had Luke managed to secure the Hartman Tower so easily? And what had he been about to tell her? The answer came to her in a flash of clarity that made her stomach drop. The expensive car, the designer clothes, the connections that got her basketball tickets and solved her venue crisis with a single phone call. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Luke isn't a driver." But if he wasn't a driver, who was he? And why had he been pretending all this time? Sienna's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Brooks, this is Megan Chen from Hartman Enterprises. Mr. Hartman would like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the auction. His car will pick you up at 9 a.m. Tomorrow, she would finally meet the elusive CEO of Hartman Enterprises. Tomorrow, she would get some answers." Little did Sienna know that her world was about to be turned upside down in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. Sienna barely slept that night. Her mind kept racing with questions about Luke. The more she thought about it, the more obvious it seemed that he wasn't just a driver. The expensive clothes, the high-end car, the connections, none of it made sense for someone earning a driver's salary. By morning, she had convinced herself that he must work for Hartman Enterprises in some capacity, maybe security or as a personal assistant to Lucas Hartman himself. That would explain how he knew about the tower's event space and could arrange for her to use it. At precisely 9 a.m., a black car pulled up outside her apartment building. It wasn't Luke's car, and the driver was a stranger who greeted her formally. "Good morning, Ms. Brooks. I'll be taking you to Hartman Tower today." The drive was silent and tense. Sienna checked her phone repeatedly, hoping for a message from Luke explaining everything, but there was nothing. Hartman Tower dominated the city skyline, 60 stories of glass and steel that reflected the morning sunlight. Sienna had seen it many times from a distance, but had never been inside. Now, as the car pulled up to the entrance, she felt intimidated by its grandeur. The driver escorted her to a private elevator that required a keycard to access. "Mr. Hartman's office is on the top floor," he explained. As the elevator rose swiftly, Sienna's stomach knotted with anxiety. What if Mr. Hartman wasn't happy with her auction plans? What if he was angry about the venue change? And where was Luke? Would she see him here? The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area where a familiar face greeted her. "Ms. Brooks, welcome," said Megan Chen, rising from her desk. "Mr. Hartman is expecting you." Megan led her down a short hallway to a set of double doors. She knocked once, then opened them. "Ms. Brooks is here, sir." Sienna stepped into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. Her attention, however, was immediately drawn to the man standing by the window, his back to her. Even before he turned around, something about his posture made her heart race. When he finally faced her, Sienna felt the floor drop from beneath her feet. It was Luke, but it wasn't Luke the driver. This was Lucas Hartman, CEO of Hartman Enterprises, dressed in an impeccable suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Hello, Sienna," he said, his voice achingly familiar yet somehow different in this setting. Sienna stood frozen, unable to process what she was seeing. "I don't understand," she finally whispered. Luke, whoever he was, took a step toward her. "I can explain." The shock on Sienna's face gave way to anger as realization dawned. "You lied to me. This whole time you've been lying to me." "Not about everything," he said quickly. "Not about the things that matter." "The things that matter?" Sienna's voice rose. "You pretended to be someone you're not. You let me talk about—" She stopped, mortification washing over her as she remembered all the things she'd said about rich people, about the elite, about Lucas Hartman himself. "Oh my God! Sienna, please." Lucas moved closer, but she backed. "Away, don't," she warned, holding up a hand. "Just don't." Lucas stopped, pain evident in his eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." "Then what did you mean to do?" she demanded. "Was this some kind of game to you? Poor little rich boy pretending to be normal for a while?" "No, it wasn't like that at all." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd seen Luke make 100 times when he was frustrated. Because they were the same person, the thought made her dizzy. "Then what was it like? Explain it to me," Sienna challenged, crossing her arms protectively over her chest. Lucas took a deep breath. "That first night, when you mistook me for your driver, I was going to correct you right away. But then you started talking, really talking, to me like I was just a normal person. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my life? So you decided to lie to me because it was convenient for you. I decided to let you keep seeing me as just a man, not a CEO or a bank account," Lucas countered. "And yes, I know it was wrong. I should have told you the truth sooner. But every time I tried, I was afraid of losing what we had." Sienna shook her head, trying to make sense of it all. "And what exactly did we have, Lucas? A relationship built on lies?" "No," he said firmly. "Everything I told you about myself, about my father, about my feelings about us, that was all real." "How can I believe anything you say now?" Sienna asked, her voice breaking. "You've been playing me from the beginning. The car service, the basketball tickets, the venue. It was all just you pulling strings from behind the scenes. I was trying to help you." "I never asked for your help," Sienna shot back. "I certainly never asked to be your charity case." Lucas flinched as if she'd slapped him. "Is that what you think? That you were a charity case to me?" "What else would you call it? The billionaire CEO swooping in to fix the poor girl's problems?" "I would call it falling in love," Lucas said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Sienna felt her heart constrict painfully in her chest. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say that." "It's the truth," Lucas insisted. "I fell in love with you, Sienna, with your strength, your kindness, your honesty, everything about you." "Honesty?" Sienna laughed bitterly. "That's rich coming from you." Lucas moved to his desk and pulled out a small envelope. "I had this whole day planned differently. I was going to explain everything, apologize, and then ask you to give me a chance to make it right." He handed her the envelope. "I still want that chance." Reluctantly, Sienna opened it to find 2 plane tickets to Paris. "I remembered you said you and Jason had always wanted to go to Paris with your parents," Lucas explained. "I thought maybe after the auction we could all go. You, Jason, and me, a fresh start." Tears stung Sienna's eyes. It was exactly the kind of thoughtful gesture that had made her fall for Luke. But Luke didn't exist. He never had. "I can't accept these," she said, putting the tickets back on his desk. "I can't accept anything from you." "Sienna, please." "No," she cut him off. "You don't get it, do you? I trusted you. I opened up to you about things I haven't told anyone, and the whole time you were laughing at me behind my back." "I never laughed at you," Lucas protested. "Not once." "Really? Not even when I complained?" About rich people right to your face. Not even when I criticized you, Lucas Hartman, for not showing up to your own gala. Sienna's voice broke. God, I must have seemed so stupid to you. You could never seem stupid to me, Lucas said softly. You're the smartest, most genuine person I've ever met. Sienna wiped away an angry tear. Stop it, just stop. I came here for a business meeting about the auction, not whatever this is. Lucas's face fell, but he nodded. Of course, you're right. He straightened his shoulders and gestured to the conference table in the corner of his office. Please, have a seat. We can discuss the auction plans. The sudden shift to professionalism felt jarring, but Sienna was grateful for it. She needed time to process everything, and focusing on work was easier than dealing with the emotional whirlwind inside her. For the next hour, they reviewed the auction details as if they were strangers meeting for the first time. Lucas was respectful and businesslike, asking thoughtful questions about her plans. Sienna answered mechanically, avoiding his eyes. When they finished, Lucas walked her to the door. The car will take you back to your office. And Sienna... He hesitated. I truly am sorry. Sienna looked at him one last time, at the face she'd grown to care for, the eyes she'd trusted. So am I, she said quietly and walked away. In the elevator, Sienna finally let the tears fall. She felt like a fool. All those private moments, all those confidences shared, they hadn't been between her and a kind driver named Luke. They'd been with Lucas Hartman, playing a role for his own amusement. Back at Carter Events, Sienna threw herself into work, refusing to think about what had happened. When Vanessa asked how the meeting went, she simply said, "The venue is confirmed. Everything's on track." At the end of the day, Sienna hesitated before leaving the building. Would Lucas be waiting outside in his car? The thought made her stomach twist with a confusing mix of hope and dread. But the street was empty, except for regular traffic. No black car, no Luke, no Lucas. Sienna wasn't sure if she felt relieved or disappointed. She took the bus home, crowded among strangers, feeling more alone than she had in months. For the next week, Sienna avoided all contact with Lucas. He tried calling, but she let it go to voicemail. He sent text messages that she read but didn't answer. Once a delivery arrived at her apartment, a bouquet of daisies, her favorite flower, something she'd mentioned during one of their drives, but she sent it back. At work, she focused exclusively on the auction preparations. The event was now just days away and there was still much to do, especially with the venue change. "You're working too hard," Maria commented one afternoon. "Is everything okay?" "Fine," Sienna said shortly. "Just busy." "And your hot driver friend?" "I haven't seen him around lately." Sienna's hands stilled on her keyboard. "He wasn't who I thought he was." Maria studied her face. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question, but Sienna nodded anyway. "I don't want to talk about it." At home, things with Jason were strained as well. He'd noticed the change in her mood and the absence of Luke, but Sienna deflected his questions. "Did you guys break up or something?" he asked one night over dinner. "Why?" "We're never together," Sienna replied. "And yes, we're not talking anymore." Jason frowned. "Why not? You seemed happy with him." "It's complicated, Jace. That's what adults always say when they don't want to explain something," he grumbled. Sienna sighed. "He wasn't who he said he was, okay? He lied to me about some important things." "Like what?" "Like his job, for starters." Sienna pushed her food around her plate. "He's not actually a driver." Jason raised an eyebrow. "So? People lie about their jobs all the time." "This was different," Sienna insisted. "He pretended to be someone he's not. He made me believe—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "That he cared about you?" Jason asked quietly. Sienna looked up, surprised by her brother's perception. "Yes. And you think he doesn't?" "I don't know what to think anymore." Jason was quiet for a moment. "You know, after Mom and Dad died, I was so angry. I thought it wasn't fair that they were taken from us, that the world was just cruel." Sienna reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I know, Jace. But the thing is," he continued, "I started pushing everyone away. My friends, you, anyone who tried to get close, because I was scared of losing someone else I cared about." "That's understandable," Sienna said gently. Maybe, Jason shrugged, but it was also really lonely. And it didn't actually protect me from anything. He looked at her directly. I guess what I'm saying is, maybe this guy lied about his job, but that doesn't automatically mean he lied about caring for you. Sienna stared at her brother, surprised by his wisdom. When did you get so smart about relationships? Jason grinned. I watch a lot of TV. That night, lying in bed, Sienna found herself replaying moments with Lucas in her mind. The way he'd listened when she talked about her parents, how he always remembered little details about her day, the genuine concern in his eyes when she was upset. Had it all been an act? Or was there truth beneath the deception? She picked up her phone and scrolled through his unanswered texts. I'm sorry. Please give me a chance to explain. I miss our talks. The auction preparations look amazing. You've done an incredible job. I understand why you're angry. I just want you to know that my feelings for you are real. The last one had come that morning. I'll respect your decision if you never want to see me again. But please know that meeting you was the best thing that's happened to me in years. I'm sorry I ruined it. Sienna's finger hovered over the reply. Button. Part of her wanted to respond, to hear him out, but another part, the part that still stung from the humiliation, couldn't bring herself to do it. She set the phone down without replying. The day of the charity auction arrived, and Sienna was a bundle of nerves. Not only was this her biggest event yet, but she knew she would have to face Lucas again. The Hartman Tower event space was even more spectacular than she'd imagined, a glass-enclosed rooftop garden with panoramic views of the city. The auction items were displayed elegantly around the room, and soft music played as the first guests began to arrive. Vanessa appeared at Sienna's side, looking impressed despite herself. You've outdone yourself, she admitted. If this goes well, there might be a promotion in your future. Under different circumstances, those words would have thrilled Sienna. Now, they barely registered, as the room filled with wealthy patrons. In evening wear, Sienna kept glancing toward the entrance, both dreading and anticipating Lucas's arrival. When he finally appeared, her heart skipped painfully. He looked devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo, his hair slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. A nervous habit she recognized from their time together. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment everything else faded away. Then Megan approached him with some paperwork, breaking the connection. Sienna turned away quickly, focusing on checking that the auction paddles were properly distributed. Throughout the evening, she was aware of Lucas's presence like a magnetic pull. He moved through the crowd graciously, greeting guests and thanking them for their support. But his eyes frequently sought her out. The auction itself was a tremendous success. The auctioneer's rapid-fire delivery and the competitive spirit of the wealthy guests drove the bids higher and higher. By the time the final item was sold, they had raised nearly double their goal for the youth education programs. As the event wound down, Sienna allowed herself a moment of professional pride. Despite everything, she had pulled off a spectacular event. She was checking with the catering staff about cleanup when a familiar voice behind her made her freeze. Sienna. She turned slowly to face Lucas. Up close, she could see the dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't been sleeping well. Mr. Hartman, she said formally. He winced at her tone but pressed on. The auction was incredible. You should be very proud. Thank you, she replied stiffly. An awkward silence fell between them. Can we talk? Lucas finally asked, his voice low. Please, just for a few minutes. Sienna glanced around. Most of the guests had left, and the staff was busy with cleanup. Fine, 5 minutes. Lucas led her to a quiet corner of the terrace, away from prying ears. The city lights spread out below them like stars, beautiful and distant. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Lucas began. About us, about what happened. There is no us, Sienna said flatly. There could be, he countered gently. If you could find it in your heart to forgive me. Sienna shook her head. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about forgiveness. It's about trust. How can I ever trust you again? I made one mistake, Sienna. One terrible, stupid mistake, Lucas said, his voice tight with emotion. But everything else between us was real. Every conversation, every laugh, every moment. That was all real. Was it? Sienna challenged. Because I thought I was talking to Luke, a regular guy who understood what it's like to struggle, to worry about paying bills, to live a normal life. But that person doesn't exist. He does exist, Lucas insisted. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Luke is part of who I am, the part that doesn't get to come out very often in this world. He gestured around them at the luxury of the tower. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions. My life was all about the company, about living up to my father's legacy, about dealing with people who only saw me as a walking bank account. He stepped closer, his eyes intense. Then you got into my car that night and suddenly I was just a person. You talked to me, really talked to me, and you listened like what I had to say actually mattered. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my life? Sienna felt her resolve weakening. That still doesn't justify the lie. No, it doesn't, Lucas agreed. And I'm not asking you to pretend it didn't happen. I'm asking you to look at everything else, all the truth that came after, and decide if it's worth throwing away. He reached for her hand, and this time, Sienna didn't pull away. I fell in love with you, Sienna Brooks. Not because you were some novelty or a charity case, but because you're the most genuine, brave, caring person I've ever met. You made me want to be a better man, the kind of man who deserves someone like you. Tears welled in Sienna's eyes. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But the fear of being hurt again, of being made a fool of, held her back. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Lucas gently wiped a tear from her cheek. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Just don't close the door completely. Give us a chance. Before she could respond, Vanessa's voice called from across the room. Sienna, the client from the Rothschild wedding is here. He wants to discuss hiring us for another event. Sienna stepped back from Lucas, gathering her composure. I have to go. Lucas nodded, disappointment clear in his eyes. Of course, but Sienna. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. This is my private number, not the CEO's number, not the billionaire's number, just mine. If you decide you want to talk about anything, please use it. Sienna took the card hesitantly and slipped it into her purse. Goodbye, Lucas. As she walked away, she could feel his eyes following her, but she didn't look back. She couldn't. Because if she did, she might just run back into his arms, and she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The week after the auction passed in a blur. The event's success had raised Sienna's profile at Carter Events, and Vanessa assigned her to lead several new high-profile projects. The promotion they'd discussed was officially offered, along with a substantial raise. Under normal circumstances, Sienna would have been ecstatic. Now the news felt hollow without someone to share it with. She hadn't called Lucas, though his A card burned a hole in her wallet. Every time she considered reaching out, doubt crept in. What future could they possibly have? They came from completely different worlds. Even if his feelings were genuine, how long before the novelty wore off and he realized she didn't belong in his life? On Friday evening, Sienna arrived home to find Jason packing a duffel bag. Going somewhere? She asked, setting down her purse. Tyler's. Dad is taking us camping for the weekend, he explained. I told you about it last week, remember? Sienna vaguely recalled him mentioning something, but with everything that had happened, it had slipped her mind. Right, of course. Do you have everything you need? Yeah, Mr. Sanders is providing all the camping gear. Jason hesitated, studying her face. Will you be okay here alone? You've seemed kind of down lately. Sienna forced a smile. I'm fine. Just tired from work. How you still haven't talked to him, have you? Jason asked knowingly. Who? Luke, or whatever his real name is. Sienna sighed. His name is Lucas, and no, I haven't. Why not? It's complicated, Jason. Adults always say that, he muttered. But from where I'm standing, it seems pretty simple. You miss him, he misses you. What's the problem? The problem is that he lied to me, Sienna said, frustrated. He pretended to be someone he's not. Yeah, I get that, Jason conceded. But did you ever think maybe he was being more himself with you than he gets to be with anyone else? Sienna stared at her brother, struck by his insight. A car honked outside and Jason grabbed his bag. That's Tyler's dad, I gotta go. He gave her a quick hug. Just think about it, okay? Sometimes people make dumb mistakes when they're scared of losing. Something important. After Jason left, Sienna wandered around the quiet apartment, his words echoing in her mind. Was that what Lucas had done? Made a mistake because he was afraid of losing the connection they'd formed? She remembered how easily they'd talked in the car, how natural it had felt to share her thoughts and fears with him. Had that been the real Lucas all along? Almost without conscious decision, Sienna found herself pulling out his card and dialing the number. He answered on the first ring. "Sienna?" The hope in his voice was palpable. "Hi," she said softly, suddenly unsure what to say. "I'm glad you called," Lucas said when she didn't continue. "How are you?" "I'm okay, got a promotion at work." "That's wonderful. I always knew you were destined for great things." The genuine excitement in his voice made Sienna smile despite herself. "Thanks. Is there a particular reason you called?" Lucas asked carefully. "Not that I'm not happy to hear from you, I am. Very happy." Sienna took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, about giving us a chance." "And?" His voice was tight with anticipation. "And I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that this is all some kind of fantasy that can't possibly work in the real world. I'm scared of getting hurt again." "I understand that," Lucas said gently. "I'm scared too, if that helps." "You are?" "Terrified," he confirmed with a small laugh. "Scared of messing this up again. Scared of losing you for good." Sienna felt something loosen in her chest at his honesty. "Jason's gone camping for the weekend," she found herself saying. "I was thinking of ordering pizza and watching old movies tonight." There was a pause, then, "That sounds perfect. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself," Sienna said. "The real you, no more pretending." "No more pretending," Lucas promised. "Just me, exactly as I am." "I'll text you the address," Sienna said, even though she knew he remembered it. "I'll be there in an hour." After they hung up, Sienna stood in the middle of her living room, heart racing. She had no idea if this was the right decision or if she was setting herself up for more heartbreak. But for the first time since discovering the truth, she felt hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to what they'd had in those precious moments in the car, when they were just two people connecting, without pretense or expectation. Maybe the journey they'd started on that rainy night wasn't over after all. Maybe it was just beginning. Sienna smiled and went to get ready, her steps lighter than they had been in weeks. Across town, Lucas hung up the phone with a grin that wouldn't quit. He had a second chance with Sienna, and this time he wasn't going to waste it. This time he would show her exactly who he was. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just the man who had fallen in love with her. "Thank you," he whispered to no one. In particular, gratitude washing through him like a wave. Sometimes the greatest journeys began with a simple wrong turn. And sometimes getting lost was the only way to find what you were really looking for all along. Sienna checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror one last time. She had changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple blue sweater. Casual, but not like she didn't care. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and she wore just a touch of makeup. The doorbell rang exactly 1 hour after their call, making her heart jump. Taking a deep breath, Sienna went to answer it. Lucas stood in the hallway holding a bottle of wine and a small paper bag. He had traded his usual business attire for jeans and a grey Henley that made his blue eyes seem even more intense. Without the trappings of wealth, he looked more like the Luke she had first met, except for the nervousness in his expression. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he replied, his eyes taking her in as if memorizing every detail. "You look beautiful." Sienna felt her cheeks warm. "Come in." As Lucas entered her small apartment, Sienna was suddenly aware of how modest it was compared to what he must be used to. The furniture was mismatched, the paint was chipped in places, and the kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people. But if Lucas noticed any of this, he didn't show it. Instead, he smiled as he looked around. "This feels like a real home. What's that supposed to mean?" Sienna asked, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her voice. "Just that it feels lived in, comfortable," Lucas explained quickly. My place is so sterile sometimes, like a hotel room more than a home. Sienna relaxed slightly. I ordered the pizza already. Should be here in about 20 minutes. Lucas nodded and held up the paper bag. I brought dessert. Chocolate chip cookies from that bakery we passed that time on 5th Street. You mentioned they were your favorite. The fact that he remembered such a small detail from one of their drives made something warm unfurl in Sienna's chest. Thanks. An awkward silence fell between them. There was so much to say, but neither seemed to know where to start. Would you like a tour? Sienna finally offered, gesturing around. It won't take long. Lucas smiled. I'd love one. The tour took all of 2 minutes. The small living room, the galley kitchen, a brief glimpse of her bedroom and Jason's room, and the single bathroom they shared. It's not much, Sienna said as they returned to the living room, but it's home. It's perfect, Lucas said sincerely. It feels like you. They sat on the couch, a careful distance between them. Lucas opened the wine he'd brought and poured 2 glasses. So, Sienna said, taking a sip for courage, no more pretending. No more pretending, Lucas agreed. Ask me anything you want. I'll tell you the truth, Sienna considered for a moment. Why did you keep lying? After that first night, you could have just told me who you were. Lucas looked down at his glass. I was going to. But then you started talking about the gala, about the CEO who didn't even bother to show up, me, and I panicked. I thought if I told you then you'd never speak to me again. So instead you decided to become my regular driver. Sienna raised an eyebrow. Lucas had the grace to look embarrassed. Not my finest moment, I admit, but by then I already knew I wanted to see you again. And the more time we spent together, the harder it became to tell you the truth. Because you knew I'd be angry. Because I knew I'd lose you, he corrected gently. And the thought of that was unbearable. Sienna studied his face, looking for any sign of insincerity. Was any of it real? The things you told me about yourself? All of it was real, Lucas said firmly. My father dying 2 years ago, taking over the company, feeling isolated. Everything I told you about my life was true. I just left out the part about being the CEO. A pretty big part to leave out, Sienna noted. I know. Lucas set his glass down and turned to face her fully. But Sienna, when I was with you, I wasn't pretending to be someone else. I was finally being myself. The real me, not the person everyone expects me to be. The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Sienna went to get the pizza, while Lucas set out plates on the coffee table. As they ate, the tension gradually eased. They talked about safer topics, the success of the auction, Jason's camping trip, the movies Sienna had lined up for the evening. Old black and white films? Lucas asked, looking at her selections. I wouldn't have guessed that. Sienna smiled. My dad loved them. We used to have movie nights every Sunday when I was growing up. After he died, I couldn't watch them for a while, but now it's like having a piece of him back. Lucas reached over and squeezed her hand. Thank you for sharing that with me. His touch sent warmth spreading up her arm. That's something I never understood, Sienna said, not pulling away. Why me? You could have any woman you wanted. Why go to all this trouble for someone like me? Lucas's expression grew serious. Because you're real, Sienna. You care about things that matter. Your brother, your work, helping others. You're not impressed by money or status. You see people for who they are, not what they have. He interlaced their fingers, his thumb gently stroking her palm. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Most people I meet either want something from me or are trying to impress me. But you just talk to me like I was a normal person. You made me feel like I mattered for who I am, not what I own. Sienna felt tears pricking at her eyes. I'm not perfect, Lucas. I've got baggage and responsibilities and a life that's complicated in ways yours isn't. And I've got a company that demands most of my time, a public image to maintain and more people trying to use me than I can count, he countered. We both have complicated lives, but maybe together they could be a little less complicated. The raw hope in his voice made Sienna's heart ache. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that whatever had started between them in those car rides could grow into something real and lasting. I'm still scared, she admitted, not just of getting hurt, but of fitting into your world. I don't belong there, Lucas. Then we'll make our own world, he said simply. One where both of us belong. Sienna looked at their joined hands, thinking about how right it felt despite everything. Let's start with a movie, she said finally. One step at a time. Lucas's smile could have lit up the room. One step at a time sounds perfect. They settled in to watch It Happened One Night, sitting closer than before. By the time the movie ended, Sienna had relaxed against Lucas's side, his arm draped comfortably around her shoulders. I should probably go, Lucas said reluctantly, glancing at his watch. It's getting late. You could stay, Sienna found herself saying. When his eyebrows shot up, she quickly added, just to watch another movie, I mean. It's nice not being alone in the apartment. The relief and warmth in Lucas's smile made her glad she'd asked. I'd like that. They started the second film, and this time there was no pretense of keeping distance. Sienna curled against Lucas's side, his arm wrapped securely around her, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. This feels right, he murmured into her hair. Being here with you like this. Sienna nodded, surprised to find that it did feel right, more right than anything had in a long time. It does. Somewhere during the third movie, they both drifted, off to sleep on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sienna woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet movement in her kitchen. For a moment, she was disoriented. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back. She and Lucas had fallen asleep watching movies, her head on his chest, his arms around her. Now he was in her kitchen, making coffee as if he belonged. There? Morning, Lucas said when he saw she was awake. Hope you don't mind. I thought you might want coffee when you woke up. His hair was rumpled from sleep, his clothes wrinkled, and somehow he looked even more handsome than he had the night before. The sight of him moving comfortably through her small kitchen, looking so at home, made something tighten in Sienna's chest. I don't mind, she said, sitting up and running a hand through her tangled hair. But I'm sure I look a mess. You look beautiful, Lucas replied without hesitation, bringing her a steaming mug. Always. The simple sincerity in his voice made her blush. Charmer. Just honest. He sat beside her on the couch, his own mug in hand. Last night was nice. It was, Sienna agreed, though I'm pretty sure my neck will be complaining about sleeping on the couch all day. Lucas laughed. Mine too. His expression grew more serious. Thank you for giving me another chance, Sienna. I promise I won't waste it. We're taking it slow, she reminded him. One day at a time. One day at a time, he agreed, raising his mug in a mock toast. Speaking of which, what are your plans? For today? Sienna thought for a moment. Nothing special. Laundry, groceries, the usual weekend stuff. Why? I was thinking maybe we could spend the day together, Lucas suggested. Do normal Saturday things. No fancy restaurants or expensive outings, just regular life stuff. The idea of Lucas Hartman, billionaire CEO, doing laundry and grocery shopping with her was so absurd that Sienna couldn't help but laugh. You want to come grocery shopping with me? Why not? He challenged with a grin. I'll have you know I'm excellent at picking out produce. Are you now? Sienna teased. And when was the last time you actually went grocery shopping for yourself? Lucas pretended to think hard. Well, there was that time in college when... No, I had a meal plan. Maybe when... No, that was my assistant. Okay, you've got me. Never. They both laughed, and it felt good. The tension of the past weeks finally breaking. All the more reason for you to come, Sienna decided. Everyone should know how to shop for groceries. It's a date, Lucas said, looking pleased. What else? Do normal people do on Saturdays? Sienna rolled her eyes at his phrasing but couldn't help smiling. Let's see. After groceries, I usually do laundry, clean the apartment a bit, maybe take a walk if the weather's nice. Sounds perfect, Lucas said with such genuine enthusiasm that Sienna knew he meant it. He actually wanted to experience her ordinary life. The day that followed was anything but ordinary for Sienna. Watching Lucas navigate the crowded grocery store, fascinated by the process of selecting fruit, amazed by the variety of cereal options, insisting on paying but respecting her boundaries when she firmly said no, was both amusing and endearing. At the laundromat, he studied the washing, Machines as if they were complex puzzles to be solved, then followed Sienna's instructions with the concentration of a student taking an important test. "I've never sorted my own laundry before," he admitted as they folded clothes together. "It's oddly satisfying." "You really don't do any of this stuff yourself, do you?" Sienna asked, curious rather than judgmental. Lucas shook his head. "When you grow up with wealth, these everyday tasks are just done for you. It's not that I think I'm too good for them, I just never had to learn." "Well, you're learning now," Sienna said, tossing him another shirt to fold. By the time they returned to her apartment with the groceries, something had shifted between them again. The awkwardness was gone, replaced by an easy companionship that felt both new and familiar at the same time. As they put away the groceries together, moving around each other in the small kitchen with surprising coordination, Lucas said quietly, "This has been one of the best days I've had in years." Sienna looked up at him surprised. "Really? Doing laundry and buying cereal?" "Being normal," he corrected. "Being with you, doing simple things that matter. No board meetings, no business calls, no people wanting things from me." He stepped closer, his eyes serious. "Just living. Life instead of managing it." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep inside Sienna. Standing in her tiny kitchen, surrounded by grocery bags, she suddenly saw Lucas clearly, not as the CEO or even as the driver, but as a man who had been lonely for a very long time. Without overthinking it, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. Lucas froze for a split second, then his arms came around her, pulling her closer as he deepened the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both a little breathless, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you again last night." "Why didn't you?" Sienna asked, her hands still resting on his chest. "I was afraid you'd push me away," he admitted. "I didn't want to rush you." Sienna smiled, touched by his consideration. "Thank you for that, for giving me time. I'd wait forever if that's what it took," Lucas said simply. The rest of the day passed in a comfortable rhythm of small tasks and meaningful conversations. They cooked dinner together, Lucas proving surprisingly skilled at chopping vegetables, despite his lack of experience, and talked about everything from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. As evening approached, Lucas reluctantly said he needed to go. "I have some work to finish before Monday, and I should probably change clothes at some point." Sienna walked him to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him leave. "Today was nice." "It was perfect," he corrected, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Can I see you tomorrow?" "Jason will be back from camping," Sienna reminded him. "I'd like to get to know him better," Lucas said. "If that's okay with you, maybe we could all do something together." The thought of Lucas making an effort with her brother warmed Sienna's heart. He'd like that. So would I. Lucas leaned down and kissed her goodbye, a kiss that promised many more to come. "I'll call you in the morning." After he left, Sienna leaned against the closed door, a smile playing on her lips. She was still cautious, still taking things one day at a time. But for the first time since discovering Lucas's deception, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The next morning, Jason returned from his camping trip full of stories about wilderness adventures and looking more relaxed than Sienna had seen him in months. "So," he said after unpacking his gear, "did you talk to your not driver guy?" "His name is Lucas," Sienna corrected. "And yes, we talked." Jason studied her face. "You more than talked, judging by that smile. Are you guys together now?" "We're figuring things out," Sienna hedged. "Taking it slow." "Cool." Jason nodded approvingly. "When do I get to meet him? The real him, I mean." "Actually, he wanted to do something with both of us today, if you're up for it." Jason's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? Most guys would be trying to get you alone, not hanging out with your annoying little brother." "You're not annoying," Sienna protested automatically. "Much." They both laughed, and Sienna realized how good it felt to joke with her brother again. The past few months had been so heavy with grief and responsibility that moments of lightness had been rare. When Lucas called, To suggest a picnic in the park, Jason surprised Sienna by enthusiastically agreeing. "Sounds better than unpacking and doing homework," he said with a shrug. Lucas arrived an hour later carrying a large picnic basket. "My housekeeper insisted on packing this," he explained somewhat sheepishly when Sienna raised an eyebrow at the elaborate setup. "I told her we could just grab sandwiches, but Mrs. Garcia has strong opinions about proper picnic food." The three of them walked to the nearby park, finding a quiet spot under a large oak tree. As Lucas spread out the blanket and unpacked the food, which included gourmet sandwiches, fresh fruit, homemade cookies, and even a small bottle of sparkling cider, Jason watched him with undisguised curiosity. "So you're really a CEO?" he asked bluntly. "Like of a big company and everything?" "Jason," Sienna admonished, but Lucas waved her concern away. "It's okay," he assured her before turning to Jason. "Yes, I'm the CEO of Hartman Enterprises. We're involved in technology, real estate, and various other industries, and you pretended to be a driver because—" Jason let the question hang in the air. Lucas met the teenager's gaze directly. "Because when your sister mistook me for her driver that night, it was the first time in years someone talked to me like a normal person, not a walking bank account. I should have corrected her immediately, but I didn't. It was wrong, and I'm sorry for the hurt it caused both of you." Jason considered this, then nodded slowly. "People treat you differently because you're rich." "Very differently," Lucas confirmed. "Some people want things from me, others are intimidated. Almost no one just sees me as me." "Except Sienna," Jason said, glancing at his sister. "Except Sienna," Lucas agreed, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "She saw past all of that even when she didn't know who I really was." "Well, my sister's pretty awesome," Jason said matter-of-factly. "She gave up everything to take care of me after our parents died. She works all the time to make sure I have what I need. She deserves someone who sees how special she is." Sienna felt tears spring to her eyes at her brother's words. "Jason?" "It's true," he said with a shrug. "And if this guy is smart enough to see that, maybe he's not so bad even if he did lie about being a driver." Lucas extended his hand to Jason. "I promise you, I see exactly how special your sister is, and I'll do everything I can to deserve her trust and yours." Jason shook his hand, his expression serious. "Just don't hurt her again, she's been through enough." "I won't," Lucas vowed. The rest of the picnic passed pleasantly, with Jason gradually warming up to Lucas, especially when the conversation turned to basketball and Lucas offered courtside tickets for the upcoming playoff games. "Dude, seriously," Jason's eyes widened. "Those are impossible to get." "Not impossible," Lucas said with a wink. "Just expensive." "Lucas," Sienna warned quietly, "you don't have to buy our affection." "I know that," he assured her. "But if I have the means to do something nice for you both, why shouldn't I?" "It's just basketball tickets, Sienna, not a private." "Island? You have a private island?" Jason asked incredulously. "No," Lucas laughed, "though my company does own some property in the Caribbean." As they packed up the picnic, Jason helped Lucas fold the blanket, the two of them talking easily about the basketball team's chances in the playoffs. Watching them together, Sienna felt a surge of warmth. This felt like family, like belonging. Later, after Jason had gone inside to finish his homework, Sienna and Lucas lingered on the building's front steps. "Thank you for today," Sienna said. "It meant a lot to see you making an effort with Jason." "He's important to you, so he's important to me," Lucas said simply. "Besides, he's a great kid. You've done an amazing job with him, Sienna." "I'm trying," she sighed. "It hasn't been easy." Lucas took her hand, his expression growing serious. "I want you to know something. Whatever happens between us, whatever you decide, I've set up a college fund for Jason. It's already done. No strings attached." Sienna stiffened. "Lucas, I can't accept that. It's too much." "It's not a gift for you," he corrected gently. "It's for Jason. He deserves a chance at the best education possible, and you shouldn't have to carry that financial burden alone." "But please, Sienna," Lucas squeezed her hand, "let me do this one thing. Not as a rich guy showing off, but as someone who cares about you both and has the means to help." Sienna looked into his eyes and saw only sincerity there. No ulterior motive, no attempt to buy her affection, just genuine care. "Thank you," she finally whispered. "That's incredibly generous." "It's the least I can do," Lucas said, then hesitated before adding, "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about." "What is it?" "I've been thinking about the Paris tickets," he began cautiously. "I know it's too soon and I'm not rushing you, but the offer still stands whenever you're ready. You, me, and Jason, a proper vacation, away from everything." Sienna thought about exploring Paris with Lucas and Jason, about creating new memories to help heal the pain of losing her parents. "Maybe for spring break," she suggested, "if things are still going well between us then." The smile that spread across Lucas's face was worth any lingering doubts she might have had. "Spring break it is." He kissed her goodbye, a kiss full of promise and possibility, as Sienna watched him walk to his car, not the sleek black one he'd used as a driver, but a more modest sedan he'd started driving to blend in when visiting. Her neighborhood, she realized something important. She was falling in love with him. Not with Lucas Hartman, CEO, and not with Luke the driver, but with the man who was both and neither, the real person beneath all the labels and pretenses. The next 6 months brought changes that Sienna could never have imagined on that rainy night when she first stepped into Lucas's car. Her career at Carter Events flourished, with Vanessa promoting her to senior event planner after the success of several high-profile functions. Lucas had been careful not to interfere with her professional growth, turning down her offers to plan Hartman events so there would be no appearance of favoritism. "You're making it on your own merits," he insisted. "Everyone can see how talented you are." Jason's grades improved dramatically, partly due to the tutor Lucas had recommended, but mostly because the security of the college fund had lifted an invisible weight from the teenager's shoulders. He no longer felt like a burden on his sister, and that freedom allowed him to focus on his future with hope instead of anxiety. As for Sienna and Lucas, they took things slowly, building a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. Lucas made an effort to participate in her everyday life, while gradually introducing her to his world as well. The first time he took her to a high society charity gala as his date, Sienna had been nervous about fitting in. "Everyone will be wondering what you're doing with someone like me," she fretted as they drove to the event. "Someone like you?" Lucas had repeated, taking her hand. "You mean someone intelligent, beautiful, and genuine? They'll be wondering how I got so lucky." And though there had been curious glances and whispered comments, Lucas had stayed by her side the entire evening, proudly introducing her to everyone as the woman who changed my life. They had their challenges, of course. Lucas's work schedule was demanding, with frequent business trips that took him away for days at a time. Sienna sometimes felt out of place in his world of wealth and privilege. And there were still moments when the ghost of his initial deception cast shadows over their happiness, but they worked through each obstacle together, one day at a time, just as they had promised. On the anniversary of the night they first met, Lucas surprised Sienna by picking her up in the same black car he'd been driving when she mistook him for her driver. "Where are we going?" she asked as he held the door for her. "It's a surprise," he said with a mysterious smile. The car took them to the Grand Plaza Hotel, the same place where Sienna had been working the disastrous gala 1 year ago. But instead of going inside, Lucas led her to the rooftop garden, which had been transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights and flowers. A small table for two was set in the center, with a bottle of champagne chilling beside it. "Lucas," Sienna breathed, taking it all in. "This is beautiful." "1 year ago tonight, you got into my car by mistake," Lucas said, taking both her hands in his. "It was the luckiest mistake of my life." As they sat down to dinner, Sienna couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. "Did you ever imagine, that night, that we'd end up here?" Lucas shook his head. "I just knew I didn't want you to get out of my car. Everything else, falling in love with you, building a life together, that was beyond even my wildest hopes." After dinner, Lucas seemed nervous, fidgeting with something in his pocket. "There's something I want to ask you," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Sienna's heart began to race as Lucas stood and then, to her astonishment, knelt before her, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. "Sienna Brooks," he began, his voice thick with emotion, This past year has been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what it means to be truly seen and loved for who I am, not what I have. You've taught me about courage, about family, about what really matters in life." He opened the box to reveal a stunning but tastefully sized diamond ring. "I know it hasn't always been easy, and I know we still have challenges ahead, but I want to face them all with you by my side. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Sienna's eyes as she looked at the man before her. The man who had started as a stranger, become a confidant, broken her heart, and then put it back together again, stronger than before. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Lucas, I'll marry you." As he slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Sienna knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more obstacles, more adjustments, more moments of doubt. But there would also be love, real, honest love built on knowing each other's true selves. And that, she believed, was worth everything. 3 months later, Sienna stood in the sunshine on a beach in the Caribbean, watching as Jason and Lucas tossed a football back and forth in the surf. They had come for a long weekend to celebrate Jason's acceptance to college, with a full academic scholarship to supplement the fund Lucas had established. The engagement ring glittered on Sienna's finger as she raised her hand to wave at them. They had decided on a small wedding in the spring, just family and close friends, a compromise between Lucas's wealth and Sienna's desire for simplicity. As she watched the two most important people in her life laughing together, Sienna thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought them all here. One rainy night, one mistaken identity, one lie that had eventually led to the deepest truth she had ever known. Lucas caught her watching and jogged up the beach to join her, his hair wet from the ocean, his smile as bright as the sun overhead. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Sienna answered honestly, leaning into his embrace. Over by the water, Jason called out to them, "Are you guys being mushy again? Come on, we're supposed to be having fun." Lucas laughed and took Sienna's hand. "Shall we?" Hand in hand, they ran toward the water, toward Jason, toward the future they were building together, a future that had begun with a simple wrong turn on a rainy night when a woman mistook a CEO for a driver and found the love of her life. Sometimes, Sienna thought as the waves crashed around them, and Lucas's hand held firmly to hers, the best journeys begin when you end up exactly where you weren't supposed to be. Back in the city, the sleek black car sat in Lucas's garage, no longer needed for its pretend purpose, but kept as a reminder of how their story began. Lucas had suggested selling it, but Sienna insisted they keep it. "It's part of our history," she'd said, "the place where we first connected, where we fell in love." Even though it started with a lie, Lucas had asked, still occasionally haunted by his initial deception. "It started with a connection," Sienna had corrected him. "The rest is just how we found our way to the truth." And that was the thing about love, Sienna had come to understand. It didn't always arrive in the package you expected. Sometimes it came disguised as something else entirely. Sometimes it took wrong turns and detours before finding its way home. But when it did, when you found someone who saw you, really saw you, and loved what they saw, that was worth every mistake, every misunderstanding, every moment of doubt along the way. For Sienna and Lucas, the journey had been complicated, messy, and at times painful, but it had also been real as the love they now shared, as real as the life they were building together. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The end.